All right, so today you're just going to get a little introduction into rational and negative numbers, and then you're going to be asked to do a little bit of work with them. So first off, I just want to make sure that you know what a rational number is. You've been working with rational numbers your whole life in math. Really, a rational number is any number that you can write as a fraction. So if you just think of any old random number, let's say I take like the number 2. You can make the number 2 into a fraction. Like you could say that's equal to 2 over 1, or you could also say it's equal to 10 over 5, or, whatever. The number 2 you could make into a fraction, so it's rational. You can also take most decimals and write them as a fraction. So like 0.1, we can make that into a fraction. That's 1/10. You could also, some repeating decimals you can. For example, 0.333 repeating, which is what that little line above it means. A lot of you probably already know that that's equal to 1/3. So all of those are rational numbers, anything that could be written as a fraction. You might ask, well, what's not a rational number then? Not a rational number, and we're going to look at this more later in the year, but there are things like this symbol right here, which you may know as pi. Well, pi is approximately equal to 3.14. I say approximately because that decimal actually goes forever, and there's no pattern, there's no repeating it. So the key, like the 0.333, that can be written as a fraction because the decimal repeats. But pi, 3.14, and then it keeps on going, 1, 6, 9, and la, la, la. And there is no pattern to it. So if there's no pattern, you can't write it as a fraction. So that means that this is not a rational number. In this unit, we're only going to be working with rational numbers, okay? Fractions, decimals, and whole numbers. Okay? Now, a specific kind of rational number that we're going to be focusing on is negative numbers. So negative numbers, up to this point, at least here at SAS, in grade 6, the focus is on rational numbers. And then in grade 7, we bring in negative numbers. So what is a negative number? Well, if you look and think of a number line, and I'm going to put 0 right into the middle. Well, I could break this up, and going to the right, I would say, well, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and so on. And there's numbers in between those. Like if I go right in the middle of 0 and 1, that is 1/2. Or if I broke this up into 3 pieces, that would be like 1 and 1/3, and that would be 1 and 2/3, and so on. And I guess I should have the ones in front of there. And I could do that for infinity. Well, that's only half of the numbers, because everything that's to the left of 0, and let me go ahead and change numbers here, or colors here. Everything to the left of 0 would be considered a negative number. So if I look at where 1 is, if I go the same distance, so 1 is that far to the right of 0. If I go that same distance, approximately, to the left, this is where -1 would be. And same thing, you see where 2 is located? If I go the same distance to the left, that's where -2 is located. These are just the opposite. So like the opposite of 1 is -1, and the opposite of 2 is -2. And they're all equal distance from that where 0 is located. All right, so that's just a quick introduction about what rational numbers are and what negative numbers are. Now, what we're going to focus on today is how do you add negative numbers. All right, so I've got a bunch of problems right here. Now, here's what I want you to do. We haven't talked about how to add negative numbers yet. Some of you might have already done this because you're coming in new to SAS. Some schools do things in a little different order, and you might already know how to do this. And if you do, fantastic. But if you don't, that's fine too. What I would like you to do is I'd like you to get out. If you got a calculator, get it out. Or you can also just use like an online calculator on the computer. And I would like you to start adding these together. Okay? Now, if you know how to do it without a calculator, just go ahead and do it all without a calculator. And I'll show you the answers in just a second. But if you don't, I want you to start doing maybe the first 2, 3, 4, 5 with a calculator, however long it takes, until you start to see a pattern or make a conjecture about how you add 2 negative numbers, okay? And then once you think you might have an idea of how to do it without a calculator, try one just with like doing it mentally without a calculator, and then check it with the calculator and do that a few more times and see if you can kind of figure out how this works without a calculator. All right, welcome back. So let's see how you did. Well, hopefully you were checking with your calculator anyway, but that would have been the correct answers. So what I want to know is if I was going to try to explain this in words, and this is what I'm going to ask you to do, when you're adding negative numbers, how would you do that, assuming you didn't have a calculator? Okay, so now let's take a look. Instead of them both being negative, what if just the second number is negative? So the same idea here. If you know how to do this, just go ahead and answer these questions. But if you don't know how to do it, get out your calculator, start doing the first 3, 4, 5, however long it takes. See if you can figure out by looking at the answers how this might work. And then try the next few without a calculator, checking yourself as you go. All right, welcome back. So the correct answers for all of these should have been right there, okay? Hopefully I didn't make any mistakes myself. Now, same thing as last time, I want you to try to put down into words, how would you add two numbers, the first one being positive, the second one's negative, how would you do this without a calculator? All right, couple more to go. Same idea. Now here we're still adding. One of the numbers is negative, one of them is positive. The only difference is it's the first number that's negative and it's the second number that's positive. So try to do a few of these. If you can do them on your own, that's great, but if not, use your calculator to start yourself off and then see if after doing a few, if you can kind of identify a pattern or a strategy you might use in order to solve the rest of them without the calculator, and then give those a try. Okay, how'd we do? Here are the correct answers. Same thing, go ahead and write down how would you do this? How did you come up with the answers for the last few without using a calculator? Okay, the last couple of problems, or the last two sets of problems, these are going to be a little bit trickier, so you're really going to have to think about them, okay? So I just broke them down into set 1 and set 2. So set 1, the negative number comes first, and set 2, the negative number becomes second. Same idea. I want you to go through. If you don't know how to do it, I want you to start doing them with the calculator, the first few, and then you're looking for a strategy about how you could potentially find the answers without using a calculator, and then try the last few without a calculator, checking yourself. All right, how'd we do on these? These ones were a little bit harder. So if I go through, these were my correct answers, and the same sort of thing. Just in your own words, if you were able to figure it out, I want you to try to explain how you got these answers without the use of a calculator.